Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice, the podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the pulse of today's industry. From policy changes to leadership stories in the Western lifestyle, The Rancher's Voice dives into the stories that matter most to ag producers.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this episode of The Rancher's Voice. I'm Raylee Honeycutt, joined by Ellie Brighton today, and we are excited to introduce Justin Iverson, who's joining us today for this episode. Welcome, Justin.
Buenos dias. Buenos dias. Thanks for having me.
Well, that is a fitting theme, and I know we're supposed to be non-time specific, but it is also Cinco de Mayo when we're recording this, so we just have a full Mexican theme today going on for our podcast.
Outstanding. That's perfect.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Justin. For those of you who are not familiar with Justin, Justin is a past board member of the Montana Stockgrowers Association and currently represents MSGA on the Montana Beef Council as well. So, Justin, just to give our listeners a little bit of feedback, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live in Montana, and how you got involved in Montana Stockgrowers?
Excellent. Thank you, Rayleigh. Yeah, Justin Iverson. We ranch here in Potomac. We're in the lower end of the Blackfoot Valley near Missoula. We're actually in Missoula County. So my family moved here in the mid 70s. They sold their dairy back in Minnesota and had wanted to be ranching in Montana for quite a long time. We had family who homesteaded up near Conrad. And so Grandpa followed them out a while later. And so we've been here ever since. Cow-calf operation, we're just wrapping up calving right now. We calve a little bit later. We don't start till middle of March just because we get so cold here in the valley. It's a pretty miserable place to be in January and February. So, like I said, we're just wrapping up calving. We've got irrigation going and spring farming wrapping up as well. We got some barley in the ground and looking forward to getting some more rain.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I know it's a busy time. And what we wanted to chat with you about today is you, through the Montana Beef Council, recently headed to Monterrey, Mexico for a US Meat Export Federation trade mission. Um, this is not your first trip with this group. You actually went to Japan, correct, earlier in the year?
I did. I
So
went to Japan in September.
Yeah, so two trips in this last year. But can you just kick us off with a little bit of a background on U.S. meat export and really what they do?
Sure, absolutely. So I do represent Montana stock growers on the Montana Beef Council board. That's one of the requirements of filling the seat for stock growers that you need to have been a past board member of stock growers to be a board council or beef council board member. So I sit on that with Travis Choate, who also represents Montana Beef Council or represents stock growers on Beef Council. So um, U.S. Meat Export Federation is a contractor to the U.S. Beef Checkoff, both nationally and from the state of Montana. Montana Beef Council supports them every year. A lot of our cattle that get finished end up being exported, and it's a huge benefit to us. So the U.S. Meat Export Federation markets, they do not sell, they are not an exporter, but they are a marketer of U.S. red meat, so beef, pork, and lamb. Mexico is primarily beef and pork imports, and so they reached out to the Montana Beef Council while we were in Texas at the national meeting in February, and we're looking for more ranchers to participate in the Expo Carnes trip, which is what this was called. It was 2 days of a large meat exposition in Monterrey. It's the largest in the country, happens annually. They bring together importers and exporters from around the world, as well as meat processors, processing equipment, handling equipment, anything that deals with getting meat to people's plates was represented in this. So we were there representing Montana ranchers. I was there with some producers out of Nebraska and Arkansas on the beef side, but we also had a lot of pork producers from Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Iowa. And the U.S. Meat Export Federation also receives support from other checkoffs, much like beef. Pork supports it, lamb, the corn and soybean producers fund U.S. Meat Export Federation because all of those foodstuffs are used to finish cattle and pork that go out of country. but they also support growing cattle and pigs in other countries. So the corn and soybean go to Mexico as well. So they were there. We had a group of about 15 or 16 of us that went. It was a quick trip. We had 2 good days, but it was very interesting.
So when you talk about largest event, what would be comparable? Are we thinking like commodity classic size or bigger than that? Like, is it multiple buildings? Is it trade shows? Kind of give our listeners a little picture of like what the event really is.
Sure. It's one large trade show. I'd say the building is comparable to the Vegas Convention Center when they have Cowboy Christmas. It was quite large. I walked around it for 2 days to finally see all of it that was there. So thousands of people are coming in and out, and it's retailers, it's food service folks, it's importers, exporters. It is open to consumers to come in. Mostly they don't. They have to pay an entrance fee, but it's a great way to talk about products and what's happening. The U.S. Meat Export Federation had a large trade show in the middle that had not just us there, but exporters from the U.S. The different meat processors were there. Some of the different companies who import American beef and pork were represented under the umbrella of the U.S. while we were there. So they were talking with folks. There were meeting rooms set up inside for making deals happen. It was a large event for sure.
So, Justin, you mentioned some people that were in your group with you and then some of the people that were represented at the trade show. But just off the top of your head, I'm curious, how many different countries do you think were there? And could you name a few?
Yeah, Canada was there. Brazil was there. Argentina, Spain. I'm trying to think of who else had booths there. There were quite a number of smaller countries that were represented. Maybe didn't have a booth, but they had buyers there. I know that we had folks from Chile and Peru were coming through the U.S. Meat Export booth. We had met with them earlier in the day. And so there were folks from other areas as well. Dominican Republic had some folks there. So lots of opportunity coming out of South America that came to Expo Carnes. It was not just for Mexico.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. And from a commodity standpoint, it's great that it was like soybeans, corn, beef, poultry, pork. Um, I would hope that many people wanted to talk to the beef guy. Is that correct? Like, were you a crowd favorite?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I was a favorite. I was certainly in there helping out, and that was part of what we were there for, was to add some color to the story because they had American exporters, JBS, Tyson, National, Demcota Beef was there. All of the U.S. Beef exporters were around. And so we were there to fill in the backstory and tell about how the cattle were raised, where they came from. We all had pictures on our phones, and so we did get some folks standing around checking that out. They wanted to know the story of where the beef comes from. And certainly the beef retailers were very happy that we were there. The consumers were happy. They were passing out samples at the different booths. So we were certainly popular. Absolutely.
So, I know that the trade show, as we've talked about, is kind of the, I don't know, primary part of your trip, but what else did you do while you were there? I assume you did some other things. Got to experience a little bit of the culture.
We did. So we started out with the meeting with Dan Archibald, who is the trade representative for USDA Ag Trade Office, who gave us an update on imports into Mexico, how much we ship down there, kind of breakdown. 1.3 to 1.4 billion dollars of beef, American beef, is sent to Mexico annually. The greatest portion of that is going to be beef variety meats, so tripe, intestines, lips are something that goes to Mexico. They're quite popular in tacos. Intestines, tongue, various other cuts as well. So out of the 172,000 metric tons of beef that goes down, about 100,000 of that is beef variety meats. So they talked a little bit about market demands in Mexico as well. Northern Mexico, residents tend to eat more beef than the southern Mexico. Up north, about 36 kilos, which is about 80 pounds a year of beef. And then down south, that goes down to 16 kilos, which is about 35 pounds, I believe, 2.2 pounds per kilo annually. So the folks in southern Mexico tend to eat more pork. The folks in northern Mexico are eating more beef. One of the biggest demand drivers for Mexico is um, the markets in the resort towns. Cancun, um, tourism in Mexico City, Nayarit, Baja. There are a lot of Americans who are on vacation in Mexico and they want good prime American beef. So that's the big driver for the prime cuts. We did also visit some stores that were retailing. Uh, back to the Ag Trade Office. We were there the day they announced tariffs, which was really interesting to see. We had lots of questions, but there really weren't any answers. That's about all I can say about it. Was tariffs had been announced. Beef was already handled under USMCA, and there are no tariffs currently under USMCA for American beef going in. Um, but they were interesting to see where President Scheinbaum was going to reply, and she had a few days to do so. And it sounds like it has settled out. Anything under USMCA is going to be left untouched. So um, they did say one of the big drivers of American beef is that we have an interstate system directly to market from the United States. It's easy to get American beef into Mexico, and even with proposed tariffs, if things did change, they would still have to overcome the ease of transport into Mexico with other countries having to fly or ship things in. So the market to Brazil opened up in 2023, but so far, I think in 2024, there were only about 4,000 metric tons of Brazilian beef that came in. But they were sure excited at that meeting. The Brazil folks and the Spanish folks actually were thanking us for tariffs. It was going to make life a little easier for them, but it's not. These are all negotiation works that are in play. So I think we're still sitting very good in Mexico. Mexico is one of our top importers in the world. So it's going to continue on, I believe. And they want American beef. When we went to those stores, that's what you saw in the grocery stores. The nicer high end grocery stores was all American beef. We visited City Market, which was a very ritzy multi-level grocery store. Very fancy cars in the parking lots. It's interesting in Monterrey. There's a very wide um, difference in income levels between the lower end part of town and the higher end part of town. So this was certainly the higher end part of town. We were visiting City Market. Um, it was it was nothing but choice and prime beef sitting in there. It was a gorgeous meat case. One of the things that that store does, and one of the others that we visited, is they will custom dry age your American beef for you. So they have a dry aging locker that you can pay to leave your meat at the store. They'll dry age it and let you know when it's ready, and then call you back and have you come pick up your strip or your rib, whatever you had. So very nice market there. We also visited a a grill retailer. It was a grilling store that's all they sold was grilling equipment, grilling supplies, and meat for grilling. That has really taken off down there. So very high-end store. They also had a dry aging locker for their consumers to buy a large chunk of American beef and then dry age it. Yeah, everything that's come down there has been wet aged coming from the packers, but some folks decided they want to pay a little bit more, so they have that opportunity to do so. But we also visited some of the older markets. Mercado Juarez was a very old market. It's been in the same place in downtown Monterrey for a couple centuries. It was one of the original blocks of Monterrey. That's where you're going to find the tripe and lips and intestine. It's a wet market. Things are a little bit different down there. A little smellier, not quite as clean, but beautiful produce stands, happy people, excited. They cheered for us as we walked through the market. They started chanting whiskey for some reason, which was hilarious. We were taking our picture. So apparently they like American whiskey down there. So yeah, it was interesting. We saw a lot of different places where our products go.
Well, Justin, you kind of are a self-anointed foodie yourself, watching your Instagram, and you love to cook,
Huh, yeah.
and seeing that they are using or maybe providing meat
Yeah.
in a different way down in Mexico. Did you try something or you know, learn about a different way to prepare meat that you hadn't before, and maybe what in that world did you try that you were really surprised or were like, I'm going to take this back home and start making it at home?
For
Or you're
sure,
not
for
going to
sure.
make it home.
Or I'm not going to make it home. Correct. There's some things we just can't get here. So we didn't get anything too crazy, but what we did get to sample were some of the ways that they are using American beef to maybe do things a little bit differently. One of the marketing programs that USMEF Mexico office has is a semi that travels the country. It's a full 53-foot trailer that is a mobile grill and cooking academy. And so they had that set up in front of Expo Carnes, and they had all of us on the tour be demonstrators and actually cook and grill in front of attendees. They were able to come out. They had invited certain importers in. And so one of the things that we did that I have not done before is grilled up a 2-inch thick chuck steak. They sliced it up right there. We each had a huge charcoal grill, seasoned it nicely, grilled a big chuck steak, and then cut it up for tacos. They were finding different ways of using other American cuts in that way. That's not something we would normally do. That's something maybe low and slow and shreds, like you would do on a grill, crock pot, instant pot, whatever. But they were actually slicing chuck roast into steaks and using it. Made fantastic carne asada um, tacos. So that was something really fun for us. We did not try any of the street food. They had cabrito inside the wet market, which is goat. They suggested our American tummies would not like it. The food in the market. It smelled fantastic, but we didn't go that route. So, but like I said, we did get to participate in that Mobile Grill Academy, and they use that around the country throughout the year. It travels from Tijuana all the way to Cancun. Um, they hit up grocery store chains. They'll go to Walmart, they'll go to Costco, they'll go to HEB, and they'll do an activation, kind of like we do with Beef Council, where they talk to customers as they're going in. And if they come out and have bought American beef, they can participate in raffles, they can participate in giveaways at the truck, or they can learn how to cook the meat that they brought home. So that's a very neat project. They have the tents and the tables and all the utensils and everything needed um, to practice cooking meat. They'll also do lessons for schools and retailers and restaurants and the food service market. They will do lessons for that as well. And they also have a couple other food trucks they'll bring around to events, just like you would see food trucks around here. They have a beef and pork and then a straight pork one as well. So that was kind of fun. That was a super neat event to see the mobile grill truck, mobile grilling kitchen.
I love that idea. I
It's
think
super
that's,
innovative.
yeah, something that I think even in the States could be implemented, but um, such
Absolutely.
an
Absolutely.
easy, cool thing to like just travel around and teach people how to cook beef in different
Yeah.
ways.
It's so simple,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's probably very effective.
And they had new technology, they had old technology, they had pellet grills set up, they had charcoal grills, they had gas grills. Anything that was new or interesting in the market, they would do a lesson around. Ours is all grilled on charcoal. That's readily available in Mexico, so that's how we set it up. But they try to reach folks where they're at. I suppose depending on the community and who's uh, buying the meat, what they have. Yeah, it was super interesting.
I guess kind of like we've talked about with what you were just talking about, the mobile um, tour situation. I think that's a good example of this. But how in other ways does the work that US MEF does, like how does that impact our ranchers here in Montana?
So even though our cattle coming out of Montana don't go directly necessarily because
Right.
we're a cow calf state primarily. They're going to feedlots somewhere. Some of our cattle do end up, I'm sure, directly from processor to Mexico. But what it does is I saw that it creates more market for our calves. About $50 a head goes to Mexico. That comes back for every carcass processed. $50 to $54 is what they had calculated. Overall, $400 per carcass in exports is what we get back. And a lot of that is stuff that we would end up having to pay to render. So things like tripe and intestine and lips and all that. If we didn't have a market where folks were eating it, we would have to pay to get rid of it. So that's going to be a nice swap for us to be able to actually find a good place for our food to go. So that's why we support U.S. Meat Export Federation is it gives a place for other parts to go and we can be a more sustainable product as well. So all of those markets really help us out. Do I see a check from Mexico? No, but my buyer has a place to send my calves to be finished because they have a market demand for those cattle when they're finished.
Well, Justin, as we kind of wrap up, at the opening, I did mention that you recently went to Japan as well with a similar trade mission group. Can you just share with us a little bit of, your experience in Japan versus Mexico? What are some of the similarities and attitude towards American beef, but what are some differences too?
Well, absolutely. Japan was in September. It was the Heartland Tour. So again, it was mainly Midwest folks. It was a lot of soy and corn. It was pork, but then there were a lot of beef producers on that trip. American beef is a sign of prosperity in Japan. They like it. It's a high quality product. Um, while they do raise their own beef in the form of Wagyu and Kobe and all that, they don't produce enough. There are very few farms left in Japan anymore. Um, 20 years ago, there were over 2 million farms in Japan. And because of some very strange land use and inheritance laws, they're down to 700,000 farms in Japan. So if a
Oh,
farmer does not pass their land on to their own children or their grandchildren, family, if they don't pass it on to family, that land is taken out of production. They explained it. It was a cultural issue. They're trying to work on that, but they are losing ag. So they have to import most of their food to Japan. That was a
sounds
little
like
bit
they need a producer profitability initiative in Japan.
absolutely need a producer profitability initiative. And yes, absolutely working on succession planning. That's something they don't
Hmm.
do a great job at. And so American beef fills the niche. I actually had a gentleman from Japan come out and tour the ranch last week. He used to work in the Tokyo meat market that we visited, where they auctioned the Wagyu carcasses and grade them and then sent them on for processing. He had worked there, and he wanted to learn more about the American style of farming and ranching because the younger consumers are switching away from Wagyu and Kobe. It's too fatty. They want more lean, what they perceive as healthier meat. And so they like seeing American beef. They like the chew, they like the taste, they like the flavor, and they really like the story. That was the one big thing that we were able to get across was how we raise our cattle. This gentleman came last week and visited here, was amazed at how much space our cows have. He said they are free to roam. Well, yeah, absolutely. Wagyu is raised in a pen with three other animals that they only have room to turn around. So that's how they do things in Japan. It's not raised on pasture and in fields. So that was a big driver for them was the story of Montana and what things looked like. So same thing there. They had very high-end stores, but we also send a lot of variety meats to Japan. The biggest one is tongue. They import a tremendous amount of American chilled beef tongue. We toured Sendai. We took the bullet train north out of Tokyo and went to Sendai to a processing company that imports American tongue, skins it, slices it, or skins it into larger portions and sets it up for yakiniku restaurants, which are restaurants that will serve you a plate of sliced raw meat and there's a grill at the table. And very popular. You sit around and have beers or whiskey highballs, Jim Beam, and you grill meat with your friends at the table and cook it yourself, grill it, and eat it right there. So tongue was very popular for that. We had that a number of places. That's actually something I'll try here. I've cooked tongue before. I've smoked it and cured it and made pastrami and things, but I'm actually going to slice it thin and grill it hot. Give it a try here as well. So that was one thing to bring back from Japan. So it was very interesting. They really like American beef, but the biggest thing that Japan had was an inability to produce all of their own food.
That's really interesting. I'd like to know how the tongue turns out. I've only tried it once and it was in tacos and I didn't love it. So I'm excited to hear what you think of it when you make it at home.
Very good.
Um, what was something that surprised you on your trip? I think both in Mexico and in Japan. What were things there that surprised you?
You know, because we come from a land of plenty and we have a lot of choice and we have a lot of American raised produce and meat, it was interesting to see how much of those countries, both Japan and Mexico, import their food, how they are
Mhm.
reliant upon other countries. I think we're very fortunate that we can produce most of our own food here. I think that was a huge deal. That was new to me to see that. I feel fortunate that we're able to supply that for them for sure. That we can give them that healthy American product that tastes good and is a good eating experience. Both countries were really driven by eating experience. That was one thing they were really keyed in on, was they wanted high quality, good meat. So I would say that inability to produce most of their own food was shocking.
And I joked about producer profitability initiative earlier, but that's so true, right? Food security and national security go hand in hand. And when you are not producing your nation's food, there's a vulnerability there. And I think, food's been so readily available to everyone that sometimes you forget that that is something that you need to, remember and, keep in your country, because it is quite a scary thing to think about if something geopolitically happens, or another economic recession or whatever it may be. Not having food is a huge national security issue.
Uh, COVID was a big scare for Japan, because even their own pork and beef that are raised there are fed American corn and soybeans. So the
Mm-hmm.
Japanese Wagyu would not happen without American farm products. They know that, but they are beholden to buying all of these products to feed their own people. Mexico imports a tremendous amount of American corn to feed their own people. They don't raise enough. So it's absolutely a national security issue. If you have to negotiate for your basic life needs, that's a problem for sure.
Again, I'd like to thank you, Justin, as we kind of wrap up, for not only your work representing the Montana stock growers on the Montana Beef Council, but also the work that you've been doing through these trade events and missions. Very cool to have, like you said, in both of those, mostly Midwest folks. So to have
Yeah.
a Montana cowboy representing, or Montana brand being represented, is pretty awesome, and definitely appreciate the work you've been doing there.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for the opportunities to do that. I think it's imperative that we keep supporting these organizations and keep supporting these trade missions. This brings a lot of money back to our pockets in the end. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that and share the story.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Listeners, if you enjoyed our episode, please be sure to subscribe and follow the Montana Stockgrowers Association and the Rancher's Voice wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.